Let's talk more on the high security alert today at the Capitol building, and let's bring in former FBI agent and ABC News contributor Brad Garrett. Brad, let me pick up on the intelligence bulletin, which says starkly the U.S. Capitol remains, quote, an attractive target, unquote. So talk about the threat and also pick up where Rachel left off. Doesn't this send a message to every Nazi and white supremacist out there that they won today? The House turned tail and headed for the high grass.
So let's just start with the security that's there, which is very similar to how it was constructed after January 6th. So the question is, do you need that much security? What does it say, to your point, Terry, about groups that have made at least some comments or have discussions about attacking the Capitol today? I think the law enforcement bulletin talked about the 3 percenters. And it also talked about QAnon. And that I never got the impression that those were specific threats. It's just information they picked up. And out of the abundance of caution, they told the rest of us. Now, if you look at giving us information that's not specific and sort of, I guess, heightening people's anxiety, in particular, as you mentioned, the House is not there. Is it sort of a cave-in to every time there's a piece of chatter about a potential assault or an attack, Congress is going to shut down? The other side of that, Terry, is it also tells us in the public who law enforcement really have to rely on tips about people about to commit or talking about committing bad acts to come forward. If these tips don't go anywhere, people then sort of become numb, like, well, what's the point in passing it on? These seem to be sort of not helpful types of information, and all they do is raise my anxiety. So it sort of cuts both ways.
And Brad, would we have seen this kind of response 3 months ago, or is this the new normal now that we've had this Capitol breach?
You definitely wouldn't have seen this response 3 months ago. I was on a squad for a number of years that worked all the threats against Congress, and we used to see them every day. And there were some specific, some not, some we weeded out, some we actually went after people, arrested them, and prosecuted them. But it wasn't information that really the public even knew about. I think January 6th now has so rattled people on the Hill, and I think it's also doubly rattled the Capitol Police, because all of the heat has been on them, obviously, as to why there was not adequate security on the 6th. So I see a lot of we got to get out front of this and tell everybody what we think might be going on. But as I mentioned earlier to both of you, you have to be careful as to what signal that's really sending.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We're learning more about that attack. We saw this week FBI Director Chris Wray tell Congress that the insurrectionist attack on the Capitol was, quote, domestic terrorism. We also saw, and this was interesting, the commander of the D.C. National Guard say former President Trump's Department of Defense, he says, slow-walked approving an urgent request for help while the Capitol was under siege. Yeah, that seems extraordinary to me. What did you take from their testimonies?
It clearly, well, let's just start with General Walker, because I found him so straightforward and so honest about, look, I was trying, as soon as Chief Sund, the chief of the Capitol Police at the time, came to him and said, we're in real trouble here, we need help immediately, he starts cranking it up. And because, and you both know this, but of course the politics in getting the National Guard, where if this were a state, the governor would say, do it. You now have to get the Secretary of the Army and the Secretary of Defense on board to approve. They couldn't find the Secretary of the Army, apparently. Finally get either representatives of the Secretary of Defense, a couple of other generals got involved, but they basically said, well, we're not sure we want, this image of uniformed military at the Capitol on this day. And it was so clear to the rest of us that this was a political move, because they didn't want it to look like that the people that supported President Trump were going to be sort of stopped in any direct way, or that you would need the military to stop them. In other words, sending the wrong signal. And so I think clearly some version of that happened that day. And as General Walker pointed out, Terry, if they could have gotten there within a few minutes, the level of damage that went on I think would have been significantly reduced. It wouldn't have stopped all of it because it was already going on. But that was a big statement. As far as Director Wray, I think he painted a very clear picture. It's at the top of the FBI's list of things to do every day, which is to track domestic terrorists. Because let's face it, there is some version of a lot of them in almost every state.
And Brad, significant events in U.S. history have changed the way law enforcement operates. 9/11 is a perfect example. Do you think that January 6th is that type of event that it's going to create long-term changes? And if so, what are they?
So I think, well, they may create long-term physical security situations, like at the U.S. Capitol, or other potential targets. But let's look for a couple of seconds at how the FBI and others have gone after international terrorists. They've done undercover operations. They've done wiretaps. They've done all sorts of things to gather information. Infiltration, obviously, the undercover would be part of it. That you're going to see more of that in domestic terrorism situations, because it's very difficult sometimes in these isolated rural groups, militia groups, to really know what's going on with them unless you have somebody inside. So I think you'll see more of that. You're going to see more domestic terrorism prosecutions. And, you know, the key here really is to be steady at this. It's kind of like fighting anything that's big. You can't dismantle it, but you can slow it down and make it weaker. And I think that's what you'll see law enforcement do here.
All right. Brad Garrett, great to talk to you as always. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.